Hi card making friends, it's Sandy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do an easy stenciling rainbow sunshine card. And we're going to make it into a shaker card. I got the idea from the back of the panel from Simon Says Stamps Sunshine Stencil. It's new out this month in their release. There are 3 stencils in the group, 2 for the rays of the sun and then 1 for the base and for the clouds. I'm going to hold it down with my Waffle Flowers grip mat. I've got a piece of hammer mill paper 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I am going to start with the kind of straight up and down sun rays. And what I'm doing is I'm lining up the top and the bottom so I have an equal amount of overhang on each side, and then just push them down and the grip mat will hold them in place. Today's inks is Simon Says Stamps Positively Saturated in Sunbeam, Citrine, Peony, Ocean, Surf, and Cabbage. And we're going to start with the 2 yellows and the peony, and we're going to do the yellow rays of sunshine first. I'm starting with Sunbeam, which is the lighter of the yellows, and I have a scrap piece of cardstock there that I'm using to do my pouncing just to level out the colors so I don't get big blotches. And starting down in the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to work my way around from the center of the sun and just add a little bit of yellow. And I'm going about halfway up because we're going to be adding some pink near the top, and then we overlap the yellow, we'll get that pretty orange color coming in as well. So again, and work in both directions so that you get nice coverage through the stencils, that you don't have any white spots on one of the sides. And we're just finishing up down the right-hand side here. And adding a little bit more. I'm going to switch over to the darker color of the yellow, which is a Citrine. And again, adding some dark down near where the sun is. And then it's going to fade out a little bit lighter as we go up on the rays. Okay, so I'm switching over to the pink now. This is Peony, and I'm coming in, making sure that I splotch off onto my scrap paper, coming from the top this side down and overlapping that yellow just a little bit so that I get that pretty orange in the middle. And my ink pad, I think, needs to be inked up a little bit, re-inked. It's taken me a little bit of work to get this in here. But you want a nice even combination of the inks, and you also want it darker because it's going to dry a little bit lighter than what you're seeing. So make sure you add lots of ink to this and get it as even as possible. Okay, I'm coming back in with the bright yellow where I've got the overlay of the 2 colors so that I can really highlight that orange. Going back and forth between the light and the dark yellow just to get that effect. And picking on any spots that I think need to be covered. Okay, pulling the stencil off for the reveal. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so then you're going to put the second stencil down, and it's going to go right over top of what you just ink blend, and make sure that you line it up so that there's no white spots showing. Okay, and this fits just for an A2 size card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so you've got to make sure that you line up the top and the bottom, or you're going to end up with a white spot there as well. So we're going to switch out the colors this time. And we're going to save one of the yellows, but we're going to bring in the other 3. So the Ocean, Surf, and the Cabbage. Okay. I'm going to flip my scrap paper over so that I don't contaminate my blending brushes. And starting with the lighter of the colors, which is Surf. Again, from the center where the sun is, working my way out. And again, about halfway up, because I'm going to be adding some green and some darker blue to the top of these rays. And going in both directions so I get good coverage. Switching to a darker blending brush and coming back in with Ocean this time, just to darken up down near the center. Okay, and then I'm switching over to Cabbage, and we're going to be pulling that color in mostly on the left-hand side. We're going to come back with a little bit of yellow on the right-hand side. And again, I'm just following the picture that was on the back of the packaging that Simon Says Stamps put out. It had a very nice color combination, and I thought, hey, why reinvent the wheel? We could just copy this one. Okay, switching over to my yellow. Starting with the lighter yellow first. Always better to start with a lighter color and then add darker if you need to. Okay, and highlighting the very, very tips. And I'm also going over the green a little bit just to brighten it up. Okay, and I think we're almost done with this. A little bit down that left-hand side just for highlights. And the reveal. Coming in with stencil number 3, now we are going to color the sun itself. So again, make sure you line it up so there's not going to be any white spots showing. And we're going to flip back over to the greeny blue section scrap paper, and I'm going to be using the 2 blues and the pink for this one. Starting with the light blue, which is the surf. I'm going to color the whole thing in just to give it a base. Okay, and if you remember your color wheel, when you add a red and blue together, we are going to get a pretty purple down the right-hand side of this one. Okay, so coming in, changing my brushes out, I'm going for Ocean, which is the darker blue, shading that in, and kind of just doing half of the sun, kind of the left-hand side, and trying to get a little bit darker down there in that left-hand corner. And then I'm switching over to my pink brush, and I'm going to add the pink just on the right-hand side to get that purple blending in there. And again, go a little bit darker because it is going to dry much lighter. And voila, there is our rainbow sun. Isn't it pretty? Okay, how do you get this off the grip mat? Bend both of them and then you won't tear your paper. I have all the ink out. I'm going to do a piece for my sentiment. So I'm using the brighter yellow, the Citrine, and I'm using PEONY, and I'm going to do a strip of yellow, and then I'm going to flip it around and do a strip of pink, lining it up, and then I'm going to die cut this, and it's going to create my two-tone sentiment that I want for the top of my card. So I'm just lining these up and getting them as close as I can. And now I'm going to die cut it with the Splendid die. Then I'm going to pop the die out onto my grip mat, making sure that you get the dot for the eye and all the little pieces, pushing it down so that it's secure, and then I'm going to add a second layer of the ink just to brighten it up a little bit. And I've got the grid on the back of my sticky mat. That's why it's easy for me to turn it around. But there's a little bit of edge showing, so if I want it to stick, I can just press it down. Okay, so I have also die cut the shadow. For the sentiment, I've done that in black, and I am just going to pick up my tweezers and use that to hold my colored sentiment. I'm using the Barely Art glue with a fine tip, and I'm going to add white glue to the back of this so that I can glue it down to the shadow. And just above where I'm working, you'll see I use the Splendid Sentiment stamp set. I white heat embossed on black, wishing you a, and then the word day. Those are going to go above and below my Splendid die cut once I get my card all put together. So just gluing that down, and then I'm going to stick an acrylic handle over top of that to make sure that it dries nice and flat, and we're going to move on and build our shaker card. Okay, and I'm just going to show you here how I'm going to lay out the sentiment, just like that. And these are the 2 items I use. This is the Splendid Sentiment stamp set. There's also coordinating dies, and there's a bunch of different small words that go with the big one, and then there's the Splendid die set with the word and the shadow in behind. Okay, now we're going to make an edged shaker card. So all the stuff that you need a piece of cello, and I basically have cut it from a bag that a stamp set came in. I'm going to back my card front with the red line sticky tape. You can get this from Simon Says Stamps. This stuff is super, super sticky, and I cut it with my Spellbinders scissors because they are non-stick, and I just love those things. Okay, and you want to do all 4 sides without overlapping the tips, otherwise it's really hard to get that protective cover off. And you don't want to try and put this tape on after you've got all 3 sides of your shaker card put together either. It's very hard to do. So lay all 4 of them down. Then you're going to remove the bottom and the 2 sides. And I'm just making sure that everything's lined up. I have my cello bag piece underneath my card front. Okay, and there's about, I don't know, almost a ½ an inch of overhang on each side, and you see that I am folding it over and attaching it to that tape as I remove the release paper. Okay, so remove the release paper, fold the cello so that it sticks. Don't worry about the corners, we'll trim those in the end. But you do want to push everything down so that it's secure. And then the third side, again, remove the tape cover and then fold your cello bag over. And so by the time you are finished this, you've got these corners sticking up. You just want to trim those off so that when we attach this to the front of the card, it's going to be nice and flat. Okay, and so what this does is it creates a little bag. And so I'm going to take some sequins from Simon Says Stamps. There's a couple of different baggies here of different colors. And there's just a few left in a couple of them, so that's why I'm combining a couple of bags so that I like my shaker cards nice and full. Okay, and I'm just popping them in there. And then I'm going to turn this back over. And I'm going to remove that last piece of tape and fold that last edge of the cello over, and that is going to secure all of my shakers. And again, tap those corners down really well and then trim off the excess. Okay, and then we are ready to put our card together. Okay, so I'm going to use tear tape on the back of this now. This is basically adhered the same way as the red line tape is. I do the two sides and then I remove the protective cover from the back, and then I do the other two sides. That way I can overlap the tape. Okay, I'm going to do the two sides and then the top and the bottom. I really like this tape. It's nice and strong. It's easy to tear. You don't need to cut it. Okay, but it holds things in place and keeps everything where it's supposed to be. Okay, and in order to get this lined up, I like to use my Score Buddy, and so I've got my top folding A2 size card base, tuck it into that top left hand corner, making sure that I don't have any sticky tape hanging out over the edges, making sure my front is right side up. Okay, and then I'm going to use that top left corner and I'm just going to wedge everything in and then lay it down to make sure I get it on my card base straight. And if you happen to have a little bit of an overhang, this is the perfect time to do a little bit of trimming. There we go. Isn't it pretty? I just love this rainbow. We're at the final step. We are going to attach our sentiments, and I'm not using foam tape here because I have already got a little bit of height from all those sequins on the front of my card. So again, I'm using the Barely Art glue with the fine tip, and I am gluing the large sentiment down first, and then I'm following in behind with the two little guys. Okay, and off to the side I have a couple of acrylic handles that I'm going to place over top to make sure that they dry nice and flat. Okay, that's my share for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Everything I have used today is listed underneath this video. There's also a link over to my blog where you can get the cutting details, etc. for the cards and a list of everything that I used. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and sharing it with your friends. And I've attached a couple more videos that I thought that you might like today. Thanks for visiting. Until next time, toodles.